Hey, what's up guys, Sir Emanon here, and welcome to the highly anticipated Gouki combo tutorial for the September 2024 map. Now, as you guys can tell by the length of this video, this is going to be very in-depth and comprehensive, just showing you guys the ins and outs of not only the standard combos that you guys need to know, but also how to play through awkward hands, through specific hand traps, if you want to keep other hand traps in mind, and certain disruptions as well. This is the comprehensive way to do so. So first things first, if you guys do appreciate this kind of content, please do give the video a like, as well as just share it around with people who you think might enjoy it. I spent a long time in it, many hours of thinking of these combos, thinking of various kind of factors to consider, just various discussion points. I've had a lot of back and forth on what I wanted to do as far as formatting the video, etc. So if you guys do think that this is good content, if you guys want to see more of this kind of stuff, definitely give the video a lot of likes, because it boosts my motivation, to be honest. But anyways, the video is going to be reflective of the deck list that I made a couple of days back. You can find that video in the description box down below if you want to see a sample list. It's going to be changed around slightly just to kind of accommodate for video recording, just to make things a bit easier on my end. But by and large, it's going to be quite the same. You can apply pretty much 99% of the principles that I talked about in that theory video into this combo section. Additionally, in the description box, you will find the links to these replays that you guys see here in the video. So if you want to check them out on your own time and at your own pace, you are free to do so. And also, I will recognize this as a caveat before we start. Zone placements, of course, do matter whenever you play. In real life, you have to play around like those Mech Knight columns and relinquished anima and all that good stuff. But this video is more focused on accomplishing the end boards, just given the situations that I have. So if my zone placement is a little bit weird or not ideal, just take that into account. There's always things that could be shifted around ever so slightly, but this is more focused on kind of the mechanics of the actual combos themselves. So please bear that in mind. And also, excuse, please, any minor errors that I might have in this video that are unforeseen, because there's a lot of content here, and I don't know if I could have possibly, gone through and, removed all the errors ahead of time, because I did very much try to do so. But that is going to be it for all the administrative stuff. Again, there are going to be timestamps both in the description box as well as in the pinned comments, and if you are on a browser, you can go ahead and skip around and find these sections to your liking. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right in. Alright guys, so for these first two combos, this is going to be showing you guys the basic bread and butter combo that you want to try and go for every single game, and this is going to be the end board that you're going to try and achieve, provided of course that you're going first and your opponent doesn't have any disruption. So all this requires is going to be a single Gouki monster and any warrior that can special summon itself or put itself onto the board in some capacity. So I will say a couple of things first. The Gouki that you're opening up with, in most cases we're going to assume is not Headbatt. And the reason for this is that you generally want to be searching your Headbatt off your first Gouki search, and the Goukis cannot search duplicate copies of themselves. So do keep this in mind, and we will talk about what happens if you do open Headbatt towards the end of the video with a more awkward hand, so do stay tuned for that. And also, I'm not going to be able to be showcasing much more than just Warrior plus Gouki, because anything better than this, be it Extenders or Suprex plus Gouki or anything else, doesn't really add a whole lot to the board, unless if you really have an insanely broken hand in which you can add possibly other link monsters to your end board. But for the most part, the standard Gouki plus Warrior play is going to be enough to win you the majority of your games, provided that everything resolves. And anything else is an additional extra bonus, which will help you play through hand traps, and that is what I'm going to be primarily covering in the remainder of the video. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into what you are going to be primarily going for. So first off, you're going to summon your Extender, and then you're going to summon your Gouki, or whichever other order you find appropriate. Of course, if you open up with like Fire Flint later, you're going to summon your Gouki first, but you eventually just have to put these two onto the board. Then you're going to link these off into Isolde, to the two tails of the Noble Knights, pretty standard stuff. And you're going to order your Chainlink specifically as Isolde Chainlink 1 and your Gouki as Chainlink 2, because you want to play around things like Ghost Ogre or possibly even Gamma on the first effect. Things that get this off the board, you really do not want to have happen to you. So make sure that Isolde is going to be Chainlink 1. So we're going to go ahead and add Headbatt as well as any Gouki that we don't plan on summoning later this turn, because of course whatever you add off of Isolde, you can't summon. So make sure that it is just not the same as the Gouki that you use, because this is going to be a Gouki that you eventually do want to possibly bring back if you do get hand trapped. So just keep that in mind, is that for the most part, you want to just be adding a Gouki that you don't foresee yourself using for the remainder of the turn. Next, you're going to use Isolde's other effect, which allows you to send equips from your deck to your graveyard to summon a warrior from your deck with the equivalent level of the number of equips that you send. So of course, you're going to be sending a Divine Sword Phoenix Blade to get a level 1 Gouki. And the good thing about this now, as opposed to when Gouki initially was most prominent, is that there are multiple level 1 Gouki names. So if you open a level 1 Gouki with your Warrior Extender, then you just simply grab the other one off of the Isolde, and of course you're not going to search another level 1 off of the first one's effect. Or the first effect of Isolde, I should say. So now that we have our level 1 Gouki on the board, we're going to use Headbat's effect, which allows you to send another Gouki from your hand to the grave, and then target any Gouki that you control, special summon the card in defense position, and then the targeted monster gains 800 attack till the end of the turn. Now, the attack boost, of course, is irrelevant. The important part is that we get this monster onto the board, so we can go ahead and perform link summons. So we're going to use all these monsters to link summon a copy of Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess. This is a very, very good way to ensure that you don't get hand trapped later on if your opponent is for some reason holding them, and it allows you to go ahead and trigger off both of your Gouki effects to grab yourself at least one rematch, and the other search can be for whatever you wish. Depends on the rest of your hand and depends on what follow-up plays that you have envisioned in your mind. For the most part, I'm just going to be adding duplicate rematches in cases where we find this to be sort of the situation we have ourselves in, just because rematch is always going to be a good follow-up play on later turns. So at this point, we don't have anything much going for us other than just to simply activate the rematch, which allows us to reborn 2 Goukis with different levels. So that is what we're going to do. Notably, again, we didn't have to special summon the Gouki that we specifically started with, but again, in instances where we do get hand trapped, which we'll cover later, that is something that you want to have as an option available to you, and you never want to kind of lock yourself out with the Isolde restriction. Next up, we're going to link summon these two and go into a copy of Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, which is just a generic link 2 that requires 2 effect monsters. And when it's special summoned, if it's co-linked, you can special summon a Codebreaker 0 Day from your hand deck or grave to any zone that a link monster points to. So we're going to summon that. And then these two are going to go ahead and go into a copy of Codebreaker Virus Berserker, which, when it is special summoned and co-linked, allows you to special summon any number of Codebreaker or up to 2 Codebreaker monsters, I should say, from your hand or graveyard to zones that link monsters point to. So you're going to bring back both of the Codebreaker monsters that you just linked away for, and then you're going to go ahead and link off the 2 link monsters into a copy of the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche. Bardiche is obviously the new card that came off of the ban list, which makes a lot of these combos a lot stronger than they would have previously been last format. So you're going to use Rusty's effect, and you're going to send a copy of the Phantom Knights of Ancient Cloak to set a copy of Phantom Knights Fogblade. This allows you to go ahead and get 1 additional disruption in the form of monster negation on your board. And then after that, you can go ahead and banish the cloak from your graveyard to search yourself a copy of Silent Boots. And since you control Rusty Bardiche, which is a Phantom Knights monster, you can go ahead and summon Silent Boots straight to your field, and then link off that with the Codebreaker 0 Day into a copy of Predaplant Verite Anaconda. Verite is going to activate, and you pay 2,000 life points and sending the Red Eyes fusion to go ahead and summon a copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. Finally, we are going to go ahead and banish 2 warriors from my graveyard to add back Phoenix Blade, and then banish a copy of Silent Boots to go ahead and add yourselves a second copy of Fogblade, which we are going to promptly set, and that is going to conclude this combo. So what you have here is 3 monster negations in the form of Appaloosa, 2 additional monster negations in the forms of Fogblade, and then an Omni Negate and a very, very hard body to out with Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. I will say, just as a very minor point, is that you could definitely pick better warrior targets to banish than these two. You generally would want to banish the Virus Swordsman and the Junk Forward in this case. You want to leave Isolde in grave if you can, because it is a light monster for Access Code Talker, so do keep that in mind. And if you have a Reborn card, you would rather actually just Reborn the Berserker rather than the Virus Swordsman, because this actually has another effect to pop back row. So the best targets would be, in my personal opinion, the Virus Swordsman and the Junk Forward, or whatever other Warrior Extender that you started off with. But some other things to keep in mind is that Codebreaker 0 Day actually has an effect that says any link monster that points to this card loses 1,000 attack except Codebreaker link monsters. And why this is important is that technically it interacts with Appaloosa in a way where that effectively temporarily reduces one of its negations. So until it gets off the board, just keep in mind that it manipulates attack, which can certainly be relevant if you're facing down multiple hand traps, because you actually get rid of 2 negations from it temporarily. So if your opponent has multiple hand traps, then that is something to keep in mind. So what you could do is, instead of linking away the Virus Swordsman and the Virus Berserker that I did in this sort of showcase, you can link away the 0 Day and be just fine. So this is one way to do one of these combos, but there is another way that you can use the same starting hand to achieve a slightly different board with its own pros and cons, which we'll get into just a bit. So as I just mentioned, this is going to be an alternate line using the exact same 2 starting cards, which is a Gouki plus any extender, and it'll allow you to end on a different yet comparable board, which I will go ahead and talk about towards the end of it. So we're going to go ahead and start off the exact same way by summoning our extender as well as our Gouki, and then linking off into a copy of Isolde. We're going to get double searches here off of the Gouki monster that we linked with. We're going to grab Headbatt, and off the Isolde we will grab a Gouki that we are not going to use for the turn. Next, we're going to use Isolde's second effect, and we're going to once again grab ourselves a level 1 Gouki, depending, of course, what you started with. So we're going to go ahead and next use Headbatt to summon itself to the field, and then use all 3 of these monsters to go into a copy of Appaloosa, triggering the Goukis in the graveyard to grab ourselves at least 1 copy of Rematch and another Gouki card of our choosing. From this position, we're going to go ahead and use our Rematch here, and we're going to bring back 2 Goukis. It's important that one of them is the level 1 Gouki that you did summon off the Isolde, for reasons that'll soon be very clear, but the other Gouki can just be any other legal target. Next up, we're going to go ahead and link off the level 1 Gouki into a Linkross, which is a step that we did not do previously. Reason being is that we're going to utilize Linkross in this combo, and we're going to have to make use out of the tokens. So we're going to go and link these 2 off into the copy of Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, and do the same Codebreaker line where we grab 0 Day, then link these off into Virus Berserker, and then Berserker activates to bring back the 2 Codebreaker monsters. So at this point, we're going to actually turn the Virus Berserker into the copy of Linkross, and this might seem a little unintuitive because we don't have the space to make all 3 tokens, and we don't even actually need 2, we only need 1 token for this combo. However, we want to make sure that we have the Link 2 monster on the board, because otherwise we can't really make Rusty without being super inefficient with cards, so that is something to keep in mind. But Linkross is going to go ahead and activate its effect to grab ourselves a token or 2 tokens depending. You could go ahead and grab both tokens. It's not necessary because you only need 1 token for this particular play, but it is an option if you want to go for the second one. It is up to you. But we're going to go ahead and use Linkross' graveyard effect to tribute the token off to go ahead and resummon itself. At this point, we're going to use the Linkross as well as the Codebreaker Virus Swordsman to go into a copy of the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche. Bardiche is going to go ahead and use its effect to go ahead and grab the Ancient Cloak to the graveyard, but this time we're going to go ahead and set a copy of Shade Brigandine because we want to have another level 4 body to make a rank 4 play. So we're going to go ahead and do just that. We're going to activate the Shade Brigandine because we can activate the same turn it was set since we have 0 traps in our grave. And then we can go for any rank 4 of choice. I'm going to go ahead and choose Abyss Dweller, but you can go ahead and summon Time Thief Redoer as well, or any other rank 4 that you see fit. It is completely up to you. And then we're going to go ahead and banish the Ancient Cloak to grab Silent Boots, special the Boots, and then we're going to go ahead and move around zones a little bit because I figured that this would actually just be a little bit better. But we're going to go ahead and make a Verite Anaconda here from this position, and then go ahead and use its effect to grab yourselves a copy of Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. And then we're going to finally banish the Boots to grab a Fog Blade, and then banish 2 Warriors to get the Phoenix Blade back. So this is a very similar sort of opener, and you can tell that I did not banish the right Warriors again, so keep that in mind. But this is a very similar end board. The only difference is that you're trading a copy of Fog Blade for a copy of a rank 4, or in this case Dweller. So Dweller is nice because it does play around Dark Ruler in the same way that like Fog Blades would. The caveat is that this loses a little bit harder to something like Forbidden Droplet, but at the same time, you know, it might be better based on a specific matchup. There are a fair amount of decks that utilize the graveyard. There's not really any that are super duper crippled by it, as in like it'll just straight up stop their turn, not something like Orcust. But you can definitely get a bit of value in this current format as far as shutting down Miscellaneous Saurus. You can shut down Baby Ceratosaurus. You can stop things like Absolouter Dragon in the Dragon Link matchup. You can stop various things. So just keep in mind that Dweller is a good card to end on. However, the issue comes with extra deck space, as you are using 2 extra cards in your extra deck for a combo instead of what could possibly be used for extra utility. Things like nightmares, like particularly Cerberus is the first one people would cut. Things like possibly Borolo Dragon, other link monsters that you might be able to fit in your toolbox. So just keep all this in mind, is that whatever end board you choose to come up with is ultimately your choice, and in the majority of cases it'll be good enough either way. It'll just be very niche scenarios where you might prefer one of the other. But for the remainder of the video, I'm going to be operating under mostly the first sort of scenario without the rank 4, just because I want to make use of the double fall blade. Personally, I just like that. But again, I don't think it's incorrect to go for the rank 4 play with Linkross. It is just mostly up to what you see fit. So now that we have these basic combos out of the way, we're going to go ahead and next showcase what to do against hand traps. And this is going to be the biggest part of the video, so be sure to stay tuned. Alright, so first up on the list of hand traps that we have to contend with is everybody's favorite anti-combo card, Nibiru the Primal Being. So this is actually one of the weaker hand traps against this deck specifically, if it is the only one that you open, because you are able to still end on a very, very solid board and out the Nibiru all at the same time. So we're going to show you how to do that. So first off, we only need actually a Gouki plus any Warrior Extender, whereas the majority of these are going to require Suprex just to get that extra value, or possibly another Extender in the form of a Monster Reborn type card. So just keep all this in mind as well. But we're going to go ahead and start off, of course, the same way as we have been with the standard combo. You're essentially just going to play until a point where you can't get Nibiru'd. So you're going to go ahead and activate the Gouki as well as the Isolde. Gouki grabbing your Headbatt, Isolde grabbing you whatever other Gouki you wish. Second effective Isolde is going to go off now, and you're going to go ahead and summon a level 1 Gouki, and then you're going to summon Headbatt. So Headbatt is actually the 5th summon if you've been keeping track, and this is the only point that they can Nibiru you before you go into Appaloosa where they can't Nibiru you. So they're going to have to drop it here if they're keeping track of the summons. So that's going to wipe the board. We're going to get a token from it, but that's okay because we still get double Gouki searches. So we're going to go ahead and grab, of course, our obligatory rematch. And the other card actually, again, just doesn't matter for this combo. So you can just grab another rematch for the following turn if you wish. And from here, we're going to go ahead and start a recovery. So we're going to activate rematch. Specifically, we have to bring back a level 1 Gouki yet again, similar to the previous combo. And we're going to bring back any other Gouki that we wish. That is legal, of course. So we're going to go ahead and link the token and the Headbatt away into a copy of IP Masquerena. This could technically be any generic link to like be caught from the underworld that is a dark, because we're going to want to make Rusty. And the way that we do that is we're going to go ahead and turn the level 1 Gouki into Linkross, and suddenly, bam, you have 2 dark monsters that have a link rating combined of 3. So we can go ahead and make Rusty this way, which allows you to go ahead, use this effect to send Ancient Cloak and set Shade Brigandine. We're going to need Shade Brigandine for this specific combo, because we're going to go ahead and after we search our brutes off the cloak, we're going to go ahead and summon it as well as the Shade Brigandine. And here's a point where you have to play kind of a not ideal extra deck monster, but it is going to be required if you want to go this specific line. So the card you're going to have to use is Link Spider, because you need to turn the Brigandine into an effect monster if you want to make a copy of Verte Anaconda, because of course you cannot link away the Rusty, and you need effect monsters to make Verte. So now that you have that, you are going to be able to go ahead and summon said Verte, and use Verte's effect to grab the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. And you can actually use the Dragoon to pop the Nibiru, that way you get it off the board so they can't crash, and then you deal casual 3000 damage to them, because this card's very fair. And then you're going to go ahead and banish your 2 warriors as well as your Silent Boots to go ahead and grab back your Phoenix Blade as well as your copy of Fog Blade. So if you do not want to play Link Spider, which is understandable, you can definitely just go ahead and bypass the Rusty line altogether and go straight into Verte Anaconda and a Dragoon after you use Rematch. So this will leave you with a Nibiru token that's kind of just chilling there, but you at the very least still have the Dragoon, and the only thing you're really missing out on is an additional copy of Fog Blade. But it again all comes down to what you want to fit into your extra deck. Do you want to fit in more cards that have utility, like in this case, or do you want to fit in more cards that can combo? Do you want to fit in more Go Second cards? That is kind of the decision that you have to make as the deck builder. But just giving out options here, you can end on this board, or you can just choose to end on Dragoon and be totally fine that way. But the next combo is going to go ahead and showcase other hand traps that we're going to try and play around, specifically in regards to Isolde, and that's going to take up the bulk of the rest of the hand trap sort of section here. So see you in just a bit. Okay guys, so this next combo is a pretty interesting one because it's going to showcase how you can play through a negation on your Isolde's first effect. And some of you guys might find that a bit strange because it's almost never correct to actually negate the first Isolde, but you might run into a situation where your opponent might not be super familiar with the deck, or they might be playing a copy of like Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. This card's not popular at all at the moment, but just as, you know, a possibility, this would be a case where, yeah, they would have to negate the Isolde basically on its summon, right? So that would be a form of negating the first effect of it. So that's the card I'm going to be generally using to demonstrate this, because in most cases, if your opponent is savvy, they're not going to negate the first effect of Isolde, but in the cases that they do, you still want to be prepared for it because it does still affect the combo. So keeping all of this in mind, we're going to go ahead and get started here. This is again Suprex plus Gouki. So we're going to go ahead and start off with a Suprex using its effect to special the Gouki out of her hand, and then we're going to go ahead and make Isolde with these two. Now you get triple searches here. The Goukis grab you respectively Rematch and Headbatt, and your Isolde is going to attempt to activate to add another Gouki that you're not going to use, but the Mourner or whichever negation card is going to put a stop to that, specifically on the first effect. So, okay, what do we do now here? So we're kind of forced to use Rematch to recover because there's not really any point in using Isolde's effect while it's negated. So we're going to go ahead and use the Rematch to bring back the two Goukis that we started off with. From here, we can actually use the Isolde itself and one of the Goukis to just make a second copy of Isolde, just make another one. This is why it is generally not correct to hand trap at that point, because it is pretty easy to just make another Isolde and do the whole play anyway. Now, the reason why we want to do it this way, because you might think, well, why would we want to do that? Because all we're really doing is trading one of the Goukis, like Twist Cobra, for another Gouki, like Guts. The reason is, of course, because Guts has not used its effect yet. So we want to just grab as many searches as possible and extract as much value. Also, we have this Headbatt kind of stranded in our hand that can't really do anything unless we get another Gouki to our hand somehow. And this is the way that we're going to do that. So after Isolde uses the second Isolde uses its second effect to grab a level 1 Gouki from the deck that we haven't used yet, we're going to turn said level 1 Gouki into a copy of a Linkross. And this is going to go ahead and trigger off the level 1 in our graveyard, grabbing ourselves any Gouki that we want. It doesn't particularly matter which one it is, because all we're going to do is just use it as pitch fodder for this Headbatt to go ahead and summon it to the field. Next, we're going to go ahead and turn the two Goukis into a copy of Codebreaker Virus Swordsman. This is just a generic Link 2 and it happens to be a dark. So even if we're not using its effect, it still is fine because we want to use it for what it is, not necessarily for what it does in this particular instance. This goes ahead and allows us to use Headbatt to get another search, probably going to be rematched for the next turn. Next, we can turn the Linkross as well as the Virus Swordsman into a copy of Rusty. Rusty will go ahead and send a copy of Ancient Cloak and set a copy of Fogblade, and then we can go ahead and use the Cloak to grab Boots, special the Boots, and then turn the Boots and the Isolde into the Verte Anaconda, which allows us to get Dragoon. And we, of course, are going to get our follow-ups of the Boots search for the second Fogblade as well as the Phoenix Blade. So, as you can see, the negation of the first Isolde, all it really did was make us have a slightly weaker board in terms of not having Appaloosa, but additionally, it is a bit weaker to hand traps if they have additional hand traps, you know, not just the one way to stop the Isolde. So keep that in mind that this is, of course, a little bit more susceptible to other plays. And this is a good showcase of a way that you can think about comboing in this deck. So you'll notice that at a certain point we had Isolde, we had Linkross, and we had two Goukis, the Headbatt and the Suprex. So you can kind of count the link ratings and see where exactly you're at, and factor in things like extenders as well as rematches. So if after everything that you intend on using for the turn, if the link ratings add up to be 6, that means you can just go ahead and go Appaloosa into the Codebreaker play, which is essentially just full combo. But if the link ratings don't sum up to 6, say like Isolde is 2, Linkross is 3, Goukis are 4 and 5, then you have to kind of deviate and kind of assess what is on your board as far as what dark monsters can I have access to this turn, how am I going to get into Verte, you know, what effect monsters am I going to have, what dark monsters am I going to have. So these are all things to kind of just keep in mind as a sort of general rule of thumb. So that's going to be it for this specific combo. Next, we're going to show off probably the more prevalent hand trap mechanism, which is going to be Ash, Valor, or Impermanence on Isolde's second effect. So we'll see you there. Okay guys, so this is going to showcase a couple of different ways that you can approach going about your combo if your second effect of Isolde gets negated, whether it be by something like Effect Failure, Infinite Impermanence, or Ash. So this is going to require Suprex plus Gouki, and funnily enough, it actually does matter which Gouki you start off with in addition to Suprex. Besides, of course, the standard, well, we're going to ignore Headbatt into the equation here. So if you have a level 1 Gouki, it actually ends up being better. So I'm going to showcase that afterwards. But for now, we're going to just assume that you have something like a Twist Cobra, something that is just generally not going to be super helpful in terms of its level. And it should go without saying by now, by the way, that if you have Suprex plus Suprex, that's basically just the same as Suprex or Gouki plus Warrior. So that's why we're never going to really be taking that into account. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and normally Suprex. Use this effect to go ahead and get the other Gouki on board. We're going to make Isolde and grab all 3 searches. So the Goukis will add the rematch as well as the Headbatt. And then an Isolde will add a filler Gouki, which is what I'm going to now refer to it as. So next you're going to use Isolde's second effect, but they are going to hand trap it, and you are going to have to think of a way to navigate through this. Now, of course, the only real way to go about it, if we don't have anything else in terms of extension, is the rematch. So we're going to rematch it back to Goukis, the ones that we started off with, and we are in a position where we can go ahead and just simply summon the Headbatt. But now we're in a little bit of an awkward spot, right? Because again, like I alluded to before, we don't have any level 1 Goukis, and so we can't make Linkross, which hinders our ability to make our Rusty a lot easier. So we're going to have to kind of go a little bit minus in terms of resources if we want to achieve that play. Now, one thing that we can do here is we can just simply go into Verte Anaconda with the Isolde and any Gouki, and then use the other 2 Goukis to go and make IP Masquerena, and then Dragoon plus IP plus the Verte, so we can have an IP interruption as well as Dragoon. But if we are insistent on going Rusty, the other option is to turn a Isolde plus whichever Gouki into a copy of a Virus Swordsman. The Gouki, or the Headbatt rather, in Grave will go ahead and trigger to grab a follow-up for next turn. And then we're going to have to make IP if we want to go into Rusty. Now this should be underneath the Virus Swordsman. Not sure why I didn't move it, but that's where it should be. Don't put it in an illegal zone. But Rusty is going to go ahead and be made with the 2 monsters there. And then we can use its effect to send a copy of Cloak to set a copy of Shade Brigandine. And we can go ahead and banish the Cloak for boots, and then summon the boots as well as activate the Shade Brigandine, and then do the play before where we made a Link Spider and go into Verte Anaconda. So your choices are essentially either Dragoon plus the Fall Blade that we're going to go ahead and inevitably grab off of this copy of Silent Boots, or instead of the Fall Blade we can go and make IP like I mentioned before. So it really is up to you if you want to use various resources, if you prefer making Rusty at this point, if you do get hand trapped, or if you prefer getting the disruption from Masquerena. So that is your choice. But what if we started off with a level 1 Gouki like I mentioned? So in this case, we got hand trapped, we used our rematch, we were able to use our Headbatt, and now we can go ahead and combo off a little bit differently. So we can go ahead and turn the level 1 Gouki into a copy of Linkross. We can go ahead and turn the other 2 Goukis into the Virus Swordsman, and now we have pretty much a very similar board state to the one that we had previously, where we got our first Isolde effect negated, where we can just go ahead and turn these into the Rusty after we get, of course, our Headbatt search for the rematch. Do not forget that. We can go ahead and use our Rusty's effect to set a copy of Fall Blade and send the Ancient Cloak. And then we can go ahead and do our usual play of searching Silent Boots, specialing it, making Verte Anaconda, making Dragoon, as well as getting our second copy of Fog Blade. So this is one way to think about doing this if you do open up with a level 1, and it's why the level 1 Goukis are very, very nice to open, because they facilitate a lot more just because of their levels. But if you wanted to do this a different way, of course we're going to get your Fog Blade as well, you can actually utilize Linkross in a different manner as well. Now, I still stand that Linkross is better in cases where you do get hand trapped, and this is kind of an argument for that, but in a lot of cases, Linkross can achieve just simply different boards, not necessarily superior ones. I will point out the exceptions though, but in this case, it is going to be just an alternative. So we can go ahead and have the same board that we did previously, where we go ahead and turn our level 1 Gouki into Linkross, but we're going to go ahead and turn our Isolde not into a Virus Swordsman, we're going to turn it into a Linkross. That was a misclick there. So yeah, Linkross is going to go ahead and activate its effect to summon 2 tokens to our side of the board, and then we go ahead and make the Virus Swordsman with those 2. From here, we can go ahead and tribute the token, or one of the tokens for the copy of Linkross, and then use those 2 to go ahead and make Rusty. So Rusty can go ahead and grab the Shade Brigandine this time, sending the cloak as always. And we're going to go ahead and grab the boots. And then here in this case, we're going to go ahead and get a copy of Verte. And then we can go ahead and access rematch for next turn off the Headbatt. And then we can activate the Shade Brigandine. And we could go for a rank 4 here, or we can go for a copy of Masquerena. It is up to you. And of course, we're going to top it all off with Dragoon. So these are all very, very similar positions where your Isolde got negated on its second effect. But you can see that we end on different boards. And of course, we use Silent Boots to grab the Fall Blade at the end as well. So you have this way that we can end with the Linkross. We can also end on this board, which forsakes the Linkross in favor of a second Fall Blade in exchange for either the rank 4 or the IP. Or if you didn't start up with a level 1, you end on this board, which is simply just Dragoon and a Fog Blade. So you have a lot of different options here, and it is really up to you. You have to kind of be observant at the start if you have level 1s. So that is a very, very important thing to keep in mind, and that's going to actually be a theme that persists. There's going to be several more instances where level 1 Goukis will actually affect your combos in ways that the other level Goukis will not. So with this in mind, we're going to go ahead and move on into the next combo, which is going to talk about how we extend it through Ghost Ogre. Alright, so this is going to be the way that we play around Ghost Ogre, and similar to Nibiru, I would consider Ghost Ogre to be, at least in isolation, a very weak hand trap against this deck, because you can play around it very, very similarly to the way that we did around Nibiru, and you don't even need Suprex, so you, again, just need a Gouki and any Warrior Extender. So for this, we're going to go ahead and start off like we always do, which is managing to find our way into Isolde, grabbing your searches off of the Gouki as well as the Isolde for Headbatt and whichever other filler Gouki respectively. So it's important again here that we make sure that we chain Isolde as chain link 1, just to ensure that we don't get ogred at this point, so we can at least use its second effect before we do get ogred. So make sure that you do that. So when you do get ogred here, or if you do get ogred here, you're going to summon your level 1 Gouki, and then utilize Headbatt because you still have the body on the board. And then you can link these two away into a copy of Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, and trigger off your Gouki effects. You can grab rematch and whichever other card you want, maybe a second rematch. And then we're going to use one of said rematches to bring back a level 1 Gouki, the one that you summoned off Isolde, and whichever other Gouki that you wish. And then from here you can turn the level 1 into a copy of Linkross, and then go into Rusty with the Virus Swordsman, the Linkross, and then do effectively the same play that we've been doing, which is going to be setting cloak, setting Fog Blade, and then going ahead and running through the Phantom Knight motions, adding Silent Boots, going ahead specialing it, and grabbing yourselves a Verte with the remaining Gouki. So we get Fog Blade, we get Dragoon, we get the Phoenix Blade through getting Ghost Ogre. So effectively you were able to recover very, very nicely. And this is a reason why, Ogre is not super great, because you do still get access to your level 1 Gouki, and you still have the body on the board. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and move on to possibly definitely one of the more powerful hand traps, which is going to be Gamma. So stick around for that. Okay, so this is the game plan if we get Gamma, and admittedly the board is going to be pretty weak because Gamma is such a strong hand trap, but we do still nevertheless have a way to play around it if we open a Suprex plus Goukis. So we're going to go ahead and start off the way we normally do when we have Suprex, which is to normal it and bring the other Gouki out onto the board. We're going to make Isolde and grab ourselves these searches for rematch, Headbatt, as well as the filler Gouki. Then we're going to use the Isolde's second effect, which is going to be met with the Gamma. So this combines Ogre as well as Imperm or Valor or Ash, in that it takes the body off the board and negates its effects. So it nullifies a lot of what we would have in terms of recovery plays. So the only way we can really proceed from here is to use rematch to bring back the other Goukis back. And then we're going to go ahead and use Headbatt to go ahead and just simply go into a Dragoon, and that is going to be the end of that. So it is really, really unimpressive, and you'll notice here that, again, this is a case where, if we started out with a level 1 Gouki, we'd be in a better position because we would actually be able to do a little bit more. So before we get into that, I'm just going to point out here is that what you could technically use Dragoon's effect here to pop the Gamma and deal 1000 damage. You never want to pop the driver because putting it in grave makes the other copies of Gamma possibly live, but you could technically get that little chip damage in. The reason why I probably wouldn't recommend it is that it puts a non-dino in grave for or double evolution pill if you play against dinos, or if you play against like Dragon Link if they open their Reborn, which admittedly is a one of, but they could open Living Fossil too. It's a way to get Tuner on board for Hulk. So just probably wouldn't recommend doing it in general, and would just leave the board as is. And of course we're going to get our Phoenix Blade, which is the pitch fodder for Dark Dragoon. So that's one way to do it. It's the weakest way, but you know, it still is better than nothing. It really is just plan B, and Gamma is such a strong hand trap. But if you didn't have any other extenders and that was the hand that you opened with, that is kind of what you're stuck with, unfortunately. Now going into the situation where you actually do have a level 1 Gouki to start off with, for example, Guts. After you get Gamma, you go ahead and use your rematch again, like you did previously, and you can use your Headbatt. But now that you have the level 1, you can actually be a little bit more flexible, which is using these two Goukis that are not the level 1 to go into the Virus Swordsman, grabbing yourself a Headbatt search for the rematch, and then going for the Link Rebo, and then doing the Rusty. So it is marginally better. It's not that much better, and you're going to lose to Nibiru either way, so you might as well just commit fully, but if you have this available to you. But you're going to go ahead and grab yourself basically the Link Spider play, right? Where you go ahead and grab Shade Brigandine instead of the Fall Blade off the initial Rusty set, and then go and make Verte with the Link Spider and the Silent Boots. So you end on one Fall Blade in addition to the Dragoon, which it's alright, it could make the difference. Notably with the other combo, you'll notice that there actually still is a Gouki on the board, which means that you could get another search if they actually manage to clear it. So that is something worth noting. But in this particular instance, you actually have another form of disruption, so that could certainly come into play if the rest of your hand is something like just hand traps. So Gamma is, as you can see, a very, very powerful disruption, but there are other ways that we could possibly think about playing around hand traps, and that is if we have Reborn type extenders. So the next section of this video is going to talk all about the ways in which we can recover from hand traps if we have a way to get a Gouki onto the board after we get disrupted. So that is what we're going to focus on next in this upcoming section. Okay, so like I just mentioned, this section of the video is going to be the ways that we can recover from pretty much the same hand traps as the previous section, but keeping in mind an extra extender in the form of a Reborn type card. Now, I will preface this by saying that not all the Reborn cards are actually equal. In fact, Living Fossil is the weakest one, and I will point out the combos where Living Fossil actually doesn't work, because the restriction that it has on it, that it banishes the monster, does come up in cases where you have to have Goukis engraved to be able to rematch. So, of course, what you would want to prioritize is Monster Reborn as well as World Legacy Succession, those types of things. But Living Fossil, if you do choose to play it, also can help out in certain of these cases. So I will actually spoil here that discovering this while I was kind of going through these combos actually has made me drop Living Fossil from 2 to 1, and I am playing other cards to supplement just playing through hand traps better. But this is going to be the way that we play around, again, a disruption on Isolde's first effect. Again, keeping in mind that Mourner could technically be a card that you might run into in the future, or potentially this format if somebody happens to be messing around with it. But we're going to go ahead and get started here. So starting off, we're going to go ahead and do the same play that we would do. In most of these cases, we're just going to hold the extender until we actually do get stopped, because there's no point in committing it when this is full combo if it goes completely unhindered. So you'll notice that this combo is going to be extremely similar to combo number 4 as we get interrupted on the first Gouki, or sorry, the first effect of Isolde here. But it's going to be very similar because all you're really doing is trading the Suprex, which is an extra Gouki name, for a Reborn, which is also an extra Gouki name. You simply don't get the search, but it's totally fine because all you're really trying to do anyway is make your way into a second copy of Isolde, so we can use its effect, the other effect, to grab ourselves a level 1 Gouki. We can turn that into a copy of Link Rebo, so we can get another search here for rematch. And you'll notice something possibly a little bit strange here if you've caught on to the fact that this Headbatt is here and might be here for a while, which I'll talk about. So we're going to go ahead and use rematch for 2 Goukis, and then we're going to go ahead and make a copy of Virus Swordsman with those Goukis, and then make a copy of Rusty. And you guys have seen this form before, this format before, so I'm not going to go too much into it. I'm going to go ahead and set Fog Blade, send Cloak, grab Boots, grab Verte, and then go into Dragoon plus Fog Blade plus the Phoenix Blade. Now, notably here, we basically again ended with the exact same board as on combo number 4, so there's multiple ways to just play around the negation on the first effect of Isolde. Now going back to the Headbatt play, if you are kind of thinking a little bit ahead, you'll notice that this really doesn't do anything, because if you remember, the additional Gouki search that we got off of the Suprex actually got us eventually into just a follow-up rematch for the next turn if you look back. So that's what we effectively should be doing here. So that is what you would eventually want to do. So you'll have that as a follow-up, and you'll have Phoenix Blade as well to be able to pitch off the Dragoon and Double Fall Blade. So that is, again, the exact same case as the fourth combo in this video. So we are next just going to move into the ways that we, come back from getting stopped on our second Isolde effect. So this combo here is going to be, once again, the Warrior plus Gouki plus Reborn type hand versus cards that can stop Isolde's second effect. So I just want to briefly mention here that the reason I'm not showcasing Suprex plus Gouki plus Reborn is that, first off, that hand is relatively low probability in terms of opening it, because there's only 3 Suprex plus the Rhoda, and then a limited pool of Reborn type cards, even if you've like maxed out on World Legacy Succession and Living Fossil, which I wouldn't recommend doing. But even if you were to do that, you only have a certain amount of Suprexes to open up with these types of cards, whereas you have a higher volume of, just Warrior Extenders, so this is a lot more generic. And I figured that because this is weaker overall than that type of hand, since netting you an extra Gouki search is very much relevant in the cases where you get hand trapped, I figured this would be a better demonstration of just why the Reborn cards themselves are super important, because this is going to showcase, and probably is the best way to sort of visually demonstrate, how Reborn essentially just gets you to the same point that you would have had previously if you didn't get hand trapped, essentially just nullifying the hand trap entirely. So we're going to go ahead and start off here again with our just normal path into Isolde and grabbing ourselves searches for Headbatt and a filler Gouki. And now from here, we're going to use Isolde's effect, and that is going to, of course, be negated. And then we're going to go ahead and just Reborn back the Twist Cobra, or whichever Gouki that we started with. And from here, we have effectively just achieved, the previous combo. The only difference is that we're not going to get the additional search off of the level 1 Gouki that we would have gotten off Isolde. So that does hinder our follow-up plays, in not being able to guarantee have a rematch. So that is something to consider for sure. However, it is worth noting as well that this is essentially just a way to straight play through a hand trap. And the things I talked about with Nibiru as well still apply, where if you do get Nibiru'd, you are still going to be able to search for a rematch, because you're not summoning more times because you didn't successfully summon off Isolde, so your Headbatt is still going to be the 5th summon. The final thing also to note here is that Living Fossil actually this is one of the cases where Living Fossil doesn't work, because you need this Twist Cobra back into the grave, or whichever Gouki you started off with back into the grave, to be able to get for the rematch, because you can't revive whichever Gouki that you added off Isolde, of course. So we're going to go ahead and grab ourselves the Headbatt here, or summon ourselves a Headbatt, go into Appaloosa, and then go into basically the full combo, because off Headbatt we search rematch grabs yourselves 2 Goukis, and then depending, of course, if you play Linkross or not, you just end on your standard board. So again, just to provide your opponent doesn't have any additional hand traps. The only reason I have these again is just to showcase the options that your opponent has to stop your Isolde, but this is effectively again just the exact same combo. So we're ending on basically the full thing, and this is why I recommend playing at least some form of Reborn type cards, because if you do get stopped on what is potentially 9 cards in your opponent's deck, it's very likely that your opponent will be able to presumably stop you if you didn't have a way to extend. But now that you have a way to extend, or if you are playing ways to extend, this is just the end board. It's the exact same, just minus the rematch in hand. And of course you're going to have Phoenix Blade as well to pitch off the Dragoon. But that is why I think that this is a very, very strong argument to make for Reborn cards. So next, we're going to go ahead and talk about a different line that your opponent could take based on the actions that you might have, or rather the cards that you might start off with. And we're going to go ahead and see how Reborn affects that. So this is a scenario that's actually pretty interesting, because it's one that I would think is pretty unintuitive, but it's actually going to be Ash on your first Gouki search. And why that actually matters is that denying your search to Headbatt actually prevents a lot of your extension, and it effectively reduces your Gouki into a vanilla that was just another warrior that wasn't a Gouki. And we'll talk about what happens if you actually happen to open up 0 Goukis but still have warriors to make Isolde, which again is the same thing as if you got Ashed. But if you don't have a good extension like any Reborn type card, then you're gonna struggle in making like a very, very strong board. Whereas having this Reborn type card allows you to recover a little bit better. And I will mention that the reason I didn't include Ash in the previous section on the first Gouki search is that I was going over mostly Suprex plus Gouki lines, and if they see two Goukis, like I don't think any player would really Ash one of the two Gouki searches if you're already getting access to one, because that effectively just turns your play into Gouki plus Extender, which is still full combo like I mentioned, so there's really no point in ashing there. But again, if they ash here and you don't have a Reborn card, then you're basically just playing with two random warriors, and then we'll show later on again how to play past that. But this is going to assume that you do have the extender, which will allow you to recover quite well. So you're going to go ahead, start off the exact same way as every other combo basically, but again, because we're ordering our chain links in a way that puts our Gouki susceptible to ash, that is what is going to be responded to. So with that in mind, we're going to add a filler Gouki again, and it is actually a filler and not actually just follow up for next turn like you might expect. In the event that you do get double hand trapped, like if you get hand trapped on Isolde again, then at that point, yeah, you might want to have like this kind of play for next turn if you do have like extra Goukis. But in the cases where your Isolde does resolve, this Suprex is actually going to be pitched later on. So you're going to go ahead and grab your level 1 Gouki, and then you're going to turn that into Linkross, which will grab you a copy of Headbatt. And you might be inclined to grab Rematch here because you have two Goukis that you can actually summon. But that is actually not going to be the best way to do that, because you are denying yourself a potential for an extra body in the form of Headbatt. And because we have this extender here, we are just able to freely use this. So Living Fossil or Reborn or any Reborn type card can bring back a Gouki. You can bring back the level 1, but if you can, I would avoid doing that because again, the level 1s are just so nice to have in circulation when you have Linkross. So I would just grab whichever other level. If you started off with another level 1 Gouki, then you have two level 1s and it doesn't really matter. So pick your poison there. But if you once you do that, you can go ahead and use your Headbatt and then turn 3 of your monsters into a copy of Appaloosa, which gets your Headbatt search, and now you have access to your rematch. So yeah, effectively you can do like the same thing as far as grabbing yourself a copy of rematch off of the level 1, but this way you just got a free body and a free search, all for no extra effort, given the fact that you had this living fossil to begin with. So with that in mind, we can just go ahead and reborn our 2 Goukis, and then use the other 2 for... Oh, looks like somebody just randomly followed me on Twitch, and I'm using OBS to record, and that's why I can hear that noise. So you can hear that as well, and I'm not going to stop that. So if you made it that far into the video, then you will have a little bit of an Easter egg. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and go into Codebreaker Virus Swordsman here with the 2 non-level 1 Goukis. It is not super consequential, but having the extra body there is nice in case you wanted to, I don't know, go for cute Linkross shenanigans on your opponent's turn. But yeah, Virus Swordsman goes ahead and goes for the 0-day, and this is again essentially just full combo. So this is why, again, Reborn cards are really, really nice to have, because it allows you to get out of spots that you might not have been able to otherwise in ways that additional Warrior Extenders can't, because additional Warrior Extenders don't allow you to enable Headbatt, whereas Reborn cards do. So that's the primary difference. And here you can actually go ahead and get a copy of Shade Brigandine because you have the extra body, so you can actually make a copy of IP Masquerena with these 2. Alternatively, you can just leave Guts as a defensive wall and grab a second copy of Fob Blade instead, which is also totally fine because, again, like I mentioned in the deck profile, leaving Guts on the board is nice because it can't be killed in battle, so it's almost guaranteed to survive when you have Appaloosa and Dragoon and double Fob Blade for your opponent to contend with. But if you want to go IP, you can go ahead and do that as well, which will be a very nice supplement because you have Verite Anaconda, so you can grab another thing like Unicorn. And you, of course, are going to get your Phoenix Blade back. So this is a very, very nice way to ensure that you are able to play, fully play through Ash on your first Gouki search, which, again, if you didn't have that Reborn card, that would have made your play much, much, much weaker. But by playing Reborn cards, it makes that play never really ever correct to do. So that is why I really do enjoy that. I'm really, again, a big fan of the Reborn cards, and I would recommend playing them to at least a certain degree. But that is going to do it for this particular combo. The next one is going to go over ways that we can play around Ogre specifically, which, we already established that Ogre is not a very strong hand trap, even when you have just Gouki Extender, but what happens if you add a Reborn card into the equation? Stick around to find out. So if you recall the other combo that we had earlier in the video where we had just Warrior plus Gouki against Ogre, without the Reborn card, you will have remembered that the end board was simply a Dragoon plus a Verte Anaconda plus 2 Fall Blades set. But if you have the Reborn card, it actually makes things much better in terms of both being able to play around additional hand traps and also just make your end board stronger. So we're going to go ahead and showcase this. So we're going to go ahead, start off the exact same way. We're going to do the exact same stuff, searching Headbatt and the filler Gouki. You guys might be tired of this by now, but imagine actually going through and recording every single one of these. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and use our Succession if we opened it. So this is kind of a good point to make about this card in particular. The reason we would want to use this is specifically because in cases of like Ogre or Gamma, whereas, you know, Monster Reborn and Living Fossil, we can use this whenever, but because this has a restriction attached to it as far as when we can use it, we have to do it now to play around Ogre. If we don't end up getting Ogred or Gamut or stopped in any way, after we get the level 1 Gouki off the Isolde, we're simply just able to make Appaloosa with those guys and play pretty much the exact same way. We're just trading our extender, the Succession, for just having another extender in the form of Headbatt. They're both extenders. So you can kind of think of it that way and use the Headbatt possibly later on as just another body to grab like a rematch later or do things like that. But assuming you do get Ghost Ogre here, which is kind of the entire point of this exercise, we're going to go ahead and get this Isolde off the board, but still have a level 1 Gouki in place. At this point, we have a Gouki on the board, of course, so we can use Headbatt. And we can actually go ahead and make our Virus Swordsman, grabbing our search for the rematch. And then we can go ahead and use Linkross, or summon Linkross rather, using the Guts. So you'll notice the difference here is that we got to this stage last time with an extra Gouki on the board after we summoned Goukis off of the rematch, but here we still have rematch, which is going to afford us a lot of extra opportunities to do really interesting things. So of course we're going to naturally transition into the Rusty play, which allows us to get into, you know, the hook with the Shade Brigandine set here, because we can go ahead and search for our boots. And what we can do here is we can summon the boots as well as the Shade Brigandine. And then, you know, if you don't want to play Link Spider, then you can't really do this play in particular. But if you do play Link Spider, if you're willing to, you can actually make a cool play where you go Link Spider and then go Verte. And what this does is that it checks for Nibiru, right? Because your opponent essentially has to do it. Because, you know, if they chain it to Verte, then you still get the Dragoon. So, yeah, you're going to force out any Nibirus that your opponent might have at this point, at which stage you actually still have this rematch in hand to be able to play. So you can rematch the 2 Goukis, and you can go ahead and grab yourself a copy of Masquerena. Now, to be fair, your opponent will still have the Nibirus, so they can, you know, walk into the Masquerena or force it out during the main phase. But it is still at least some form of disruption, and in a lot of cases, you know, you could just let your opponent kill the Masquerena and expend their battle phase because you still have rematch and stuff. So if you're living, then you have a lot of chances to be able to still play the next turn. But let's say that none of that happened and your opponent didn't have Nibiru and you're just playing through Ogre. So you're back at this board. So what you do is, you know, you're checked for Nibiru, they don't have it. You go, okay, so now we're going to activate rematch, and then we can go ahead and grab our Goukis back and then make a copy of Masquerena. So at this point, you have an additional form of interruption on top of the board that you normally would have had, with just the Gouki plus extender against Ghost Ogre. So it's effectively, you know, it's effectively the same board in a lot of cases. So yeah, this is going to be a very strong way to play through Ogre while checking for multiple hand traps along the way. So next up, we're going to talk about Gamma again and see if having any Reborn card in that case actually helps out. Alright, so we established earlier in the video that Gamma is one of the most powerful hand traps against us, but does this get better if we open a Reborn card to go along with everything that we have? Well, the answer is, of course, yes, but we're going to see exactly how we can utilize this to our advantage. So we're going to go ahead and start off the way we normally do. Nothing special at all here, just going to be making Isolde, grabbing your searches, Headbatt off of the Gouki, as well as the filler Gouki off Isolde. And then because, you know, if we open Succession specifically, we have to use it now to play around specifically, you know, Gamma and Ogre. So we gotta do that. And then we're gonna use the Isolde effect, which is of course going to be met with the Gamma in this particular example. So we're gonna have to follow up, of course, by using Headbatt. And then from here, we can actually do a couple of things depending on what resources you want to hold and what boards you want to end on. So the first option is to just go straight into Verte Anaconda, which will allow you to trigger off Headbatt and grab you a search for Gouki rematch. Now, you can either keep this rematch if you really want to play for next turn and then just end on your Dragoon and pass. You could also use this rematch here to grab back 2 of your Goukis, so you can make IP alongside Dragoon, but you won't have rematch here either. The other option, if you want to make a slightly different board, is just to go ahead and if you go back to the 2 Goukis, you can link those into the Virus Swordsman instead. And you can go ahead and rematch back your 2 Goukis. Unfortunately, if you're assuming that you did not start with a level 1, you're going to have to use more materials than is probably efficient. But you can go ahead and make Masquerena, so you can go into Rusty as well. Then you can set the Shea Brigandine as well as sending your cloak. That way you can go for the Link Spider play into Verte. So it's not a fantastic series of events. Of course, Gamma is going to hinder a lot of the power that your play has to offer, but it depends if you value holding rematch, if you want to end on IP, if you want the Fog Blade instead. So it really is your choice. Of course, depends on what the rest of your hand is. Albeit this is a 3-card investment, so your hand would have to kind of be strong if you are confident enough to not go into next turn with rematch. So personally, I would definitely take that into account. Now, of course, you're going to get your Phoenix Blade as well. That should go without saying at this point. The other option, of course, is if you did happen to open a level 1 Gouki. Here we are at the point where our Isolde got Gamma'd. We already had user succession, so that's why we have the Octastretch here. And I'm assuming that that's the one we start with, and the Twist Cobra is the filler Gouki in this case. So you can go ahead and use Headbatt like we did last time. Go ahead and go into the Virus Swordsman, and then we can make rematch, or search rematch rather, and then activate it to grab back our 2 Goukis. And then Linkross will come down next, which is of course going to be better in terms of saving us the Link material. That way we can get an extra Fog Blade on board and do essentially the exact same play, just grabbing the second Fog Blade. It's pretty straightforward here. So that is the other option. And I would feel a little bit more comfortable not having a rematch if I was backing up my board with double Fog Blade as opposed to just one. That's why it's just another form of interaction. Same 3 cards, well, same amount of cards, just that small change in terms of starting with a level 1 Gouki really can make the difference. So that's why, the level 1 Goukis are especially useful for this kind of thing. So that is going to be effectively it. Of course, we're going to set the other Fog Blade and grab the Phoenix Blade back. But that is going to do it for the combos involving extension through Gamma. Next, the next entire section, which is going to be a lot of different combos. It depends on how you want to classify it. I classified it as 3 combos, but there's going to be separate parts and subcategories for each. But these are all going to involve playing around Droll specifically. So I'm going to talk more about that in just a bit. Alright, so this entire next section of the video, as I just explained, is going to be dedicated towards playing around Droll specifically. And Droll has been picking up in popularity lately simply because it actually has applications across a wide variety of matchups, even in ones that might not initially seem that great. But Droll being very, very popular also is extremely strong against our deck. So when we do our initial combo with Gouki plus Warrior, we get an initial search opportunity, a search window if you will, with the initial Gouki plus the first effective Isolde. That happens all in one chain, and then our opponent can draw us. So this is the point where we'll have Headbatt, and we're going to want to summon a level 1 Gouki off Isolde. Now the problem is that both of those Goukis that I just mentioned also have searches attached to them, and we're not going to get either of them if we get Droll'd. So that's 2 searches right off the bat, one of which is going to be for rematch, and that's like a huge problem. The other thing that I think people might overlook is the fact that Droll actually makes Rusty really like suboptimal, because of the fact that normally you're going to be wanting to send Cloak, which searches Boots, which searches a Fog Blade, so you're missing out on 2 searches there as well. So in effect, Droll cuts us off 4 separate cards, and that's a huge deal for 1 card. Of course, it is like a -1 if you look at it directly, but in terms of long-term impacts, this is one of the best single hand traps that you can actually use against Gouki if you're looking to play against this deck. That, as well as Gamma, I think, are the ones that require that require other hand traps the least in order to be effective. But that being said, that doesn't mean that there aren't workarounds, and there are ways to be able to play depending on what your hand is, of course. This first hand is going to be Gouki plus Warrior, and we're going to show how we can kind of play against Droll in a couple of different ways. So there's 2 mindsets or philosophies that I feel can apply in this case. The first is going to be playing through Droll. And what I mean by through Droll is you play your hand out as you normally would, not anticipating it or not really, factoring in Droll, or maybe like even if you think they have it, you're just gonna play and say better have it. This means that you're just gonna adapt based on whether or not they end up having it. So you are going to make changes to your line to play based on what your opponent's response is. So that's playing through a hand trap. The other way, which I'm also going to showcase, is to play around Droll, which means that you are specifically going to change your line of play to assume that your opponent has Droll before they drop it, in which case, if they do have the Droll, then you're better prepared and you can make a different end board. So there's pros and cons to each of them, and I'll kind of talk about them as we go through here. But enough of me talking about this, we're going to go ahead and just get started here. So this is going to be playing through Droll. So we're going to go and, run through our standard line of play. Nothing different than the other, like, a billion other combos in this video. We're going to go ahead and grab Headbatt off the Gouki, and then the filler Gouki off Isolde, and that is when we're going to get Droll'd. So you see here that we're going to use Isolde, grab our level 1 Gouki, and then, we can go ahead and summon our Headbatt. Now, the thing is that one of these is going to, of course, want to search for a rematch, but we can't because we're under Droll. So instead of making Appaloosa, we're not really going to... We could make Appaloosa, but it's literally just Appaloosa at that point, which is very, very weak. So, at this point, I would recommend simply just going for Verte Anaconda with the Headbatt and the Isolde, and just ending on Dragoon. Now, the thing with this is that it's not that bad, because of course, obviously, Dragoon is an insane boss monster, but also, Guts being on the field in defense position is surprisingly annoying for some decks to out. Your opponent would have to commit different resources to actually, take care of this thing since it can't be killed in battle. So some decks like Dino will have no problem clearing it. Other decks, that are more reliant on actually using their battle phase to get rid of small things like this, they could have a tougher time if, they don't want to commit resources to like a Nightmare Unicorn. Like, who really wants to Nightmare Unicorn a Gouki Guts, right? So you're going to either get value out of it if they, send it to grave somehow, or even if they don't, they had to dedicate resources to it. So generally, that's not too bad. And of course, we get our Phoenix Blade back, and we still have Dragoon as well to sit on. So considering the other 3 cards in our hand could also be extenders or hand traps or things of that nature, this is not horrible considering how strong Droll is in general against us. Now, the other way that I mentioned is to try and play around Droll. So this is an interesting kind of line of thinking where we're going to make plays specifically with Droll in mind. So we're going to go ahead and go for Isolde, and we have to think, right, if we are assuming our opponent has Droll, right, because that's effectively what the game plan is. We assume our opponent has Droll, so this is the only window that we have to search. We get a search for a Gouki card off of the Gouki name, and we get a search for a warrior that we can't summon this turn. So you have to think, like, within that limited pool of cards that you have, what's going to be the best option, and what's going to maximize value and give you the most resources under Droll. So, off of the Gouki card, the answer is, of course, going to be rematch. And then off of the Isolde, you're going to actually want to search, instead of what I've been calling filler Goukis this whole time, you would rather be searching a monster that can be better follow-up for the next turn. So that way, when your turn comes around, assuming that you can, of course, stop what your opponent's doing, then you can have a much stronger follow-up in the absence of Droll, hopefully. So the best card, I feel, is going to be Suprex for that. So great, now we have Isolde. Now, this is a little greedier because you're going to have to assume that you're going to get value off this rematch and that your Isolde is going to resolve. Now, admittedly, in the other play, if we were playing through Droll, if Isolde didn't resolve either in that case, then we weren't running on anything anyways. But this is a bit more reliant on that. But yeah, assuming it does resolve, though, we can get a level 1 Gouki, and then we can link it away alongside our Isolde, and just grab a Verte Anaconda. And then we can go ahead and rematch these 2 guys back. And we can end on a Masquerena as well. Because you have to keep in mind, again, that ending on Rusty, or having Rusty, isn't really going to do a lot. Like, yes, we could have kept the Isolde up, we could have linked the Guts into Linkross, then we could have rematched the 2 Goukis, and then made, like, Virus Swordsman and go into Rusty with the Virus Swordsman and the Linkross, but what exactly are we setting? Because we're going to be left with the board of Rusty plus Isolde, and then how are we going to make Anaconda? Well, we have to set Shade Brigandine. And I feel like if you are setting Shade Brigandine off of Rusty, you are getting rid of another Link material, because it's a Link 3, in order to just only get another link material back. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Because like we're ending on Verte anyways, and we're not going to even get a Fob Blade because we're under Droll. So that line of play is actually just going to end up with a weaker board. Now, it will have, admittedly, one more card as a follow-up in the form of having Cloak Engrave, but since we got Shade Brigadine, if our Rusty gets clear, we're not going to have the PK name to be able to special the boots anyway, since we did get Fob Blade and we can't like banish the Fob Blade to bring back Rusty, stuff like that. So I think that this is just strictly better to do it this way. And you can go ahead and end up with, that's a misclick here, that should be banished for Phoenix Blade. I kind of fiddle around here, but yeah, you end up with a board that is, you know, arguably better in terms of disruption, but I would kind of think that in cases where you can end on this, where you just have a defense position guts, I think that in a lot of cases I'd be relatively happy with that. Of course, some of you guys might prefer just having the Masquerena, that way you can actually still go into Appaloosa, you can go into things like Unicorn, etc. So it is entirely up to you if you think that this is better, and of course you have to premeditate this in advance. The other thing is, well, what happens if you premeditate it, but they end up not having Droll? So that's like another interesting thought experiment. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and assume our opponent has Droll, and then they end up not having it. So what happens at this point? Well, we search our two guys, like our rematch off of the Gouki name and the Suprex off of the Isolde, and then we say anything of resolution, and they say nope. So that means they don't have Droll. So we're gonna have to continue playing. So that's actually not a bad thing, of course, because we'd rather, you know, we'd rather them not have the Droll. But of course, this leaves us a little bit more open to hand traps. So in addition to the regular Isolde choke point, which is, you know, really annoying to say the least, even if this does resolve, we can go ahead and like grab ourselves a level 1 Gouki off the Isolde. We can link that away for Link Rebo, and then we can go ahead and actually grab a Headbatt. Because the cool thing now is that last time in the previous combo, I said that Suprex would be a follow-up and not necessarily a filler Gouki, but now that we don't have to contend with Droll, we are back to having this as a filler Gouki because we can rematch and grab our Headbatt back. There we go. But yes, we're going to do exactly as we described here, and this leaves us really, really wide open to Nibiru. So if we had just done the normal play, as in trying to just play through Droll, and they ended up not having it, then we would be able to still play around Nibiru as I showed very, very early into the video. But in the case where, you gotta hope your opponent just doesn't have it, or for some reason they're holding it, you can go into Appaloosa at this point, and then go ahead and do a Headbatt, and it would be the same play. Because you would turn these into the Codebreaker, Virus Swordsman, and then search another rematch of Headbatt, and boom, you're at the exact same spot as full combo. But these are just a couple of things to keep in mind. Droll is very interesting as far as the way you choose to play through or around it. And that is going to be one particular scenario of just Gouki plus Extender. Next up, we're going to look at alternate opening hands in the form of Gouki, Extender, and Reborn. And then later on, we're going to look at Suprex plus Gouki as well. Alright, so this next combo and series of combos is going to take things a step further by having an Extender in a Reborn card, in addition to the Gouki plus Warrior combo that we looked at earlier. So we're going to see how this changes if we want to play through versus around Droll, kind of keeping in mind the dichotomy of philosophies that we talked about before. So we're going to go ahead, do our standard stuff, make Isolde with our Warriors, grab our searches, Headbatt, and filler Gouki, you know the drill. And then we get Droll'd here. So we have Isolde as a follow-up, of course, so we can summon a level 1 Gouki as well as using our Headbatt. So here, it's basically just the same as the previous combo if we are just straight up playing through Droll. Because either you can make Verte and make Dragoon, and then sit on the Extender as well as Guts, so you have a fair amount of resiliency if you do it this way. Or you can actually just go ahead and after you make your Verte, just use straight up the Extender, and then make a copy of IP Masquerena, kind of mimicking the other board that we had in the previous combo if we were to envision us playing around Droll. But this is playing through Droll, and it requires an extra card to achieve that same board, so do keep that in mind, is that like if you got punished with Droll by playing your normal line, then you might want to just consider holding on to your Extender, holding on to Guts, hoping that the single Dragoon can just carry you, because sometimes it honestly does, and just have that be the end of it. Of course, the other mindset is naturally going to be if we wanted to play around Droll. So this is going to have a pretty similar outlook to the last combo. Our search targets are going to be effectively the same. They're going to be rematch, and they're going to be a Suprex. Or in any case, it could be a filler Gouki, to be honest here. But what you could do is, after you get Droll'd, you can go ahead and summon your level 1 Gouki off of the Isolde, and then you use your extender to grab yourself another Gouki to the field. And then you can use those to actually just make an Appaloosa, and you can use rematch to just go for your full play. So because of how you searched rematch instead of searching Headbatt, Headbatt is one more monster on the field, right? And then rematch is 2. So keeping in mind what I said at the very start of the video, which is counting link ratings essentially, this counts to be 6, whereas the other only counted to be 5. So because of that, you can just go for the full combo here, and you are fairly happy about that. I mean, all things considered, that's not too much of a hand to ask for. And if you are specifically trying to play around Droll, you can do it here. It's not too bad. And the really neat thing about this as well is that you actually were able to go Appaloosa before you used rematch, which means that your resiliency and recovery play around Nibiru doesn't actually change. So that's really, really cool. Now, of course, this isn't exactly full combo because our Rusty is not going to be able to actually, get us there. And if you paid attention, we did have to actually use our Shade Brigandine and the Link Spider if we wanted to get to this point. So if you don't want to play Link Spider at all, you could just skip the Codebreaker stuff and go straight into a copy of Verte Anaconda, and that is also fine. Or if you play Linkross, you can do it that way as well. Multitude of ways you can think about this, and I'll actually showcase what you want to do if you have the Linkross access. So if you do have Linkross, you're going to use it right about here. You'll notice that this is just a stage in like the normal line. You go ahead and play as if you're playing now the kind of full combo, just keeping in mind that Rusty is not going to be a thing for you. And of course, we would have had to make Linkross somewhere in that process off the guts. Just, of course, that is kind of a given. If you have Linkross, you have to make Linkross, otherwise there's just no point. So you can make Rusty here. You can also set a copy of Fob Blade, and this kind of saves you a Shade Brigandine that you had to use before. Whereas here, it actually makes more sense to go into the Rusty because, well, you're actually ending on a Fob Blade that you're able to set. Because remember how I said before, if you are just going into Rusty, as with this combo, where you're not ending on a Fob Blade, then was there really a whole lot of a point? That's why I said, you can just skip the Codebreaker stuff, go straight into Verte, and it would effectively be a lot of the same thing. But in a case like this, where you have Linkross, this is one of the rare instances where Linkross definitively gets you a better board. And that's, definitely a good thing. I definitely think that Linkross has its benefits in terms of being an insurance policy, and this is a very, very good showcase of it. So the final instance of us playing through Droll is going to come with Suprex plus Gouki, and we will talk about how exactly we can utilize our bigger window of searches to actually achieve better boards. Alright, so this is going to just be a quick overview of what happens if you have Suprex and Twist, or Suprex and Gouki rather. It doesn't even have to be a level 1 Gouki, and you are against Droll. So this fixes the problem of the approaches of playing through versus around Droll, because you can basically just do both at the same time. The extra Gouki search affords you that opportunity, so you are basically just going to be able to end on the same boards as the quote-unquote around versions of the previous combo, aka combos 14.1, 14.2. So we're going to go ahead and start off here, pretty much the same thing, except we have a bigger search window now because we get 3 searches instead of 2, and that matters a lot. So we can get Headbatt and rematch and our filler Gouki. So we're able to have all of that in one. So Isolde can resolve, and we're going to go ahead and grab ourselves level 1, and we can use Headbatt, and here we can just basically play around Nibiru as well, because of course if we get Nibiru, we can just go rematch. And then what we could do is, if we want to be very, very safe, we could have rematch follow-up and guts, kind of just following the mindset of this whole concept of the playing through Droll philosophy. So if we want, I think that you should be consistent. You either should decide to play through Droll or around Droll in most cases. The argument maybe could change is if you open the Gouki Extender plus Reborn, because then I think that it is in most cases going to be better to try and just play around Droll. So that's like something to think about. But it's also nice to just be consistent with your logic. So if you want it to be consistent, you can go ahead and just be safe the whole way through. Or the alternative is simply to just literally go for the exact same board as the last time. So that is the very nice thing about that. So that is going to do it for playing around Droll. The final section of this video is going to deal with very awkward hands, like non-standard hands. And that is probably going to be my favorite part of the video. So if you guys have stuck around, be sure to, just let me know if you actually made it this far. I'll insert a little tidbit here. What do you guys think if I hate kind of like putting this in here, but I'm going to just drop it super casually. So what would you guys think if I actually opened a Patreon to kind of sponsor this type of content? Because this content takes effort, man. This content takes a lot of work. I really do enjoy doing it, but it's not something that I can do very, very regularly without like actual like incentive to do it. Because to be quite honest, this is rivaling my schoolwork at this point. So yeah, if you guys would be open to that, let me know. Just to be able to see more of these for different decks. It'd be a little bit harder to do for certain combo decks than others, because some combo decks, are very high rolly. Like you can think, I mean, obviously Adamantipator is not like tier 1 anymore, but if, for example, that was still kind of a thing in the format. But yeah, just let me know. I don't know. I kind of just decided to drop this here on a whim, so here you go. All right, on to the next stage of combos. Alright, these last few combos here are going to be going over what I consider to be awkward hands. Basically just non-standard hands that you might intuitively think don't end up achieving much of anything, but in fact actually can produce something that is greater than the sum of its parts. And to me, this is the most interesting and intriguing part of creating combo videos. When I sit down and try and think of all the different combos that I can think of, I kind of like to sort of put myself through a puzzle almost, right? Where it's basically trying to figure out how much value I can extract from cards that seem to do very little on their own. But surprisingly, you can actually do quite a lot. So what happens if you open 0 Gouki monsters, but you still have a way to go into Isolde? Well, there's actually 2 answers to this, which changes on if you have a normal summon or not. So if you're forced to use your normal summon, like in this kind of hand where you have junk forward and junk forward, or maybe you have forward plus Blue Mountain Butter Spy, something like that, then you are going to go ahead and special your one warrior, normal your other, and then go ahead and go into Isolde. Now, this search is going to be largely inconsequential because the Gouki that you summon off of this is going to be pretty much the only Gouki that you'll have in circulation. And you're not going to really use rematch because you're never going to have multiple Goukis in grave unless you have other cards, which is outside the scope of this kind of thought experiment, right? So we're just going to go ahead and grab Suprex because, again, it is just continuing the trend. It is just the best follow-up play that you could probably have in the form of a Gouki if you happen to draw a Gouki next turn, for example. But we're going to use Isolde, and we're going to grab a level 1 Gouki, which is just going to be there as more of a body and follow-up than anything else. So we're going to link into Linkross, and of course we can grab our search. We can't use this rematch. If we search Headbatt, we don't have a Gouki to be able to target to raise attacks, so can't use Headbatt either. So we're kind of just stuck with having the best cards that we can. You could make the argument to just search another Gouki monster so you can summon it off Suprex, because you're likely going to get rematched that way anyways, so that's another thing you could do. So it's not really super big for this combo, but if you want to think ahead for next turn, which you definitely should, then possibly searching another Gouki is the way to go. Gouki monster, not the rematch. But anyways, here is another case, one of, I believe, the third in this video, where Linkross actually comes up in terms of being strictly better than not having Linkross. Because for the majority of this video, I would say you didn't need Linkross to achieve the boards even through hand traps. But in the cases where you can use it as a good insurance policy, that's where I think it shines the most. So this is a good, strong, solid argument to run a Linkross. So you can make it, obviously, with the Isolde here, summon your 2 tokens, and then you can go ahead and make your copy of Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, tribute off a token for Linkross, and then go into good old Rusty. Rusty can go ahead and set yourself a Shade Brigandine while sending the Cloak. Grab yourself a copy of Boots, and then you do have to also play Link Spider, but honestly, I think that Link Spider, if anything, this video has shown that in a lot of weird cases, Link Spider is actually nice to have if you do get disrupted. So something to just kind of consider. I am very likely actually going to play Link Spider in my own build, so just keep that in mind. But we're going to go ahead and make Verite here, and just end then Dragoon plus the Fob Blade off of the boots that we have in Grave. So if you don't have Linkross in your extra deck, then you can simply just end then Dragoon, and that is fine. You're not going to have the extra bodies like Rusty and the token here, but you're pretty much set up for next turn because you have like actual Goukis to play with now. So that is also a very, very nice thing. You still have your Codebreaker engine. Yeah, actually you don't have your Codebreaker engine. I lied. But you have access to Rematch, and you have access to like Appaloosa, Access Code, etc. So this is totally fine. The other way that you can think about this is if you do have your normal summon. So if you do have a normal summon, things change quite a lot, because you can actually make use out of the search that you had for the one Gouki that you summon off of Isolde. So you can special your monsters and then go into Isolde, keeping in mind that we have preserved a normal summon, of course. The search off Isolde is going to largely be the same. It's still going to be follow-up. However, you can go ahead and actually utilize your search off of the level 1 Gouki that you grab off the Isolde to search any normal summonable Gouki that is not level 1. For once, we don't want a level 1 because we're going to link away said Gouki and then get Rematch, and that is going to be all fine and dandy. Now, funnily enough, if our opponent Nibiru's us here, it's like the same as getting Nibiru in our standard combo. So that is also pretty good. And you know what this means. We had everything sum up to be 6, because this is 2, 3, 4, and then Rematch that we're going to grab here is going to be 5, 6. So count them up, count the link materials, it's 6, which means we have full combo. So just like that, even when we had no Goukis to start with, we are able to actually use the Goukis to end up, achieving our full board. So I think that's like one of the cool things, is that because of the types of extenders that we're playing, Forward and Fire Flint Lady and Shade Brigandine, all of these are special summons essentially, or have the capacity to be. So just like that, you look at that, you end on the entire full board, even with a hand that looked really, really not that good. So that is one of the ways that you can actually, play as if nothing had happened, which is one of my favorite things to do. It is, admittedly, not like the greatest, because you are very, very vulnerable to hand traps, so you can't really play through a hand trap with this kind of thing. But hey, we're talking about putting ourselves in an awkward handicapped position to begin with. It's honestly kind of a small miracle that we're able to achieve this still, but it's not a miracle when you have math on your side, and math is just counting up the link materials, and that is all good. So we are going to go ahead and talk about the next thing, which is going to be a very similar circumstance in opening non-Gouki warriors, but we're also going to have a Reborn card to go with it. So we'll talk about that in just a sec. Okay, so this is going to be a very, very similar concept to the last set of combos, which is going to be, if you open no Gouki warriors, but this time you actually have a Reborn card. And this is going to demonstrate yet another reason why I think you should incorporate some Reborn cards into your deck, because if this was just a third warrior that wasn't a Gouki, then you actually couldn't really perform this, because again, the function of Reborn card is not simply to just get another warrior onto the board, but it's to get specifically a Gouki in times where you need it to, in most cases, trigger Headbatt. But this is going to be what you're going to do. So you actually don't really need your normal summon for this, although you can have it. It would help if you got stuck at a certain point. But you're going to go ahead and summon your warriors and then make Isolde and grab your single search. Now, this would normally, like the last combo, just be a follow-up play, but in this case, it's actually going to be a filler Gouki. So just keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and use Isolde to grab ourselves a copy of Guts. Specifically Guts. Notice I didn't say level 1 Gouki this time. It's because we didn't start off with any Goukis, so you don't have to worry about duplicates. And I believe Guts is just better than Octastretch, so that is that. But we're going to go ahead and make a Link Rebo using the Guts, and then search for a copy of Headbatt. Then we can use our good old Extender to grab our Guts back. Now, this, if we get Nibiru here, would suck. That is true, but if you are opening this week, again, you kind of just have to hope that your play goes through. But if you successfully summon Headbatt, even if you don't summon Appaloosa, you at least still get to search for a rematch, and that is what we are ultimately going for. And actually, because we didn't use our normal summon in this kind of specific hand, you actually could get Nibiru there, and then link off the Nibiru token and the Headbatt into something like an IP, or you can like make Link Spider and then go into Verite. You can like do a bunch of stuff. So yeah, it's not even that bad if you get Nibiru if you didn't have to use your normal summon. If you did have to use your normal summon, it's a little bit worse, but it's not the end of the world. And also notice that one of the warriors that I did use as an extender is Shade Brigandine, just showcasing that you don't have to set Shade Brigandine off of the Rusty, assuming you're playing like the non-Linkross variant of the full combo. But if you are, then you have to, of course, rely on other warriors, which is not too much hard to ask for, because, you know, there's plenty of other warriors in the deck. So this is going to be just the standard full combo, except you actually had a Link Rebo, if you noticed, at the time that we rematched. So we basically have another Link material, and we can do our full combo plus another monster on board. Now what you could do is you could trade one of the Rusty materials for a copy of Shade Brigandine and an IP instead. But defense position Guts is always nice, especially when you actually don't have another rematch in hand, because you are, again, lacking a Gouki search because you didn't start off with any to begin with. So I personally think that actually ending on the Guts here is good, because that gives you a guaranteed follow-up for the next turn. Assuming this, of course, doesn't get spun back or something. So with that, you were able to end on the full board, essentially, and have an extra Guts, which is really, really cool. So that is another good argument for having Reborn cards. It just allows you to play out of these awkward hands, and I am a big fan. 10 out of 10 would recommend. But next is going to be possibly my favorite play in this entire video, which is going to be what happens if you open specifically Fire Flint Lady with 2 non-Gouki warriors. Alrighty, so as I just mentioned, this is going to be a combo with Fire Flint Lady specifically and 2 other Goukis. And I did just say in the last combo that if you just have a third warrior extender that isn't a Gouki, it doesn't achieve much. However, if that warrior happens to be Fire Flint Lady, you can actually make use out of its effect to grab yourselves a more cohesive Gouki engine out of what seems like nothing. And the cool thing about this is that you actually don't even need your normal summon, so you can have something like Double Forward and Fire Flint Lady and be totally okay. So this is going to look pretty similar to the last combo in terms of what the end board results in, but you're going to just achieve it in a slightly different way. So we can go ahead and special and then normal if we have to, but just get our warriors onto the board and summon our Fire Flint Lady. Then we can go into Isolde. Now, what you could do is to opt to just not search here to play around Ghost Ogre, because of course, if you get ogred, then that really sucks because you need the second effect way more than you need the first effect at this point. And keeping in mind that you couldn't really do that for combo number 17 because you wanted to go for the full play, and that required you to have the filler Gouki. You could have possibly done it in combo number 16, depending on how conservative you were, based on how much you really desired your follow-up. So these are all things to really just keep in the back of your head. It's all the small things that you should take into account. But yes, we are going to use this ult effect, the other effect, the good one, the really good one I should say, and then grab ourselves a Gouki Guts, which is very, very good. We can liquidate the Guts for a copy of Link Rebo, and now we can search our deck for any Gouki that is not a level 1. So we will grab Twist Cobra because I like it. We're going to go ahead and use Fire Flint Lady. We're going to send it to the graveyard, and then we will special the Twist Cobra out of our hand. So that is Fire Flint Lady's other effect. It just summons a level 4 warrior out of your hand. And that is really good because even though it is a minus, the Gouki search ends up making up for it, and then the rematch is also just a +1. So it's a net +1 in the long term, even though it's an immediate minus. So we can go to Appaloosa here. Granted, of course, we are vulnerable to Nibiru at certain points of the combo, but it's not the end of the world if we get Nibiru, provided that we got this Twist Cobra on the board. If we didn't manage to make that far, we better hope that we didn't have to use our normal summon. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, if you have 3 non-Gouki warriors, it's gonna probably be 2 Flint Lady and 1 forward, or like this, 1 Flint Lady, 2 forward. The only way that it would work if you didn't have to use your normal summon at all would be I don't know, forward, Shade Brigandine, and Fire Flint Lady. But that's a very, very specific combination of cards that I don't think is worth counting for, especially when we already open Awkward and we're trying to account for a hand chop on top of all of that. That's just a lot, right? I mean, those scenarios can come up, but it's kind of a lot. But count them up. We got six Link materials, So this is full combo. So really just kind of driving home that point that if you can count to 6, you have full combo. It's basically simple as that. So yeah, this is going to be all the stuff you've seen throughout this entire video. I even specialed the boots from the deck there if you caught it. But yep, nothing too crazy. I put myself to 0 life points because that's what I meant to do. And we are going to end on the full board. So the thing is that unlike the last combo, there is one key difference, and that is the fact that we are not guaranteed to have a Gouki follow-up for the next turn in the form of rematch or just additional Gouki names. But I would like to think that generally speaking, if you can end on this board, your opponent's going to have a pretty hard time cracking it. And you still have 2 other cards in your hand and the card you're drawing for next turn. So that could be any number of things. Any Gouki really just gets you there, right? So this is a pretty solid way to approach what I think is a pretty interesting series of cards to have in your hand. But the next is going to talk about what is considered the Gouki Garnet, which is Headbatt. And I will go ahead and showcase why exactly opening Headbatt is not that bad. See ya in just a bit. Alright, so these next 2 combos are going to showcase what happens if you open Headbatt specifically. So I mentioned at the start of the video, one of the very first assumptions was that whichever Gouki that we're playing with as our starter Gouki is not going to be Headbatt, whether it be with Suprex or with a Warrior Extender. And now it's finally time to confront what exactly happens if we do open the Headbatt. And it is pretty likely if you are playing some variant of my build, aka if you're playing 3 Headbatt, because obviously if you play more, you're going to open it more, makes sense. But I would like to also mention that if you do play as many Headbatts as I am, it's not like you're cutting other Goukis to make space for the Headbatts. Like, you're not going to replace your copies of like Guts or copies of Twist Cobra, etc. To play more Headbatts. You're just going to play extra Headbatts to get that Gouki count higher. And also the probability of opening just Headbatt as the only Gouki is not particularly high given that there's 10 other of them. So I think that it's okay, but even still, this actually right here, Headbatt plus Warrior is actually full combo. It just requires you to be a little bit more susceptible to Nibiru and of course other hand traps. But in general, considering that this is considered traditionally the brick in the Gouki lineup, I think that this is actually pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and explore what exactly happens if this is the opener. So we're going to go ahead and normal our Headbatt and special our Extender, and then go into Isolde. Now normally you would grab Headbatt here off the Gouki, but you can't grab Headbatt off Headbatt, so what we're going to do is actually reverse things as far as our order of operations and grab ourselves a copy of Rematch. So normally we grab Rematch after a whole thing, but we're just going to switch things up so that we can resolve our effects in the correct sequence, which means that we're going to grab a filler Gouki here as well with the Isolde. And then off of the Isolde second effect, we're going to summon a copy of what should be Guts, but for some reason I put Ultra Stretch here. Maybe he was feeling left out that he wasn't in the whole video. I understand, you were the filler Gouki most of the time, you deserve some attention. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and go into a copy of the Linkross. Can you guys tell I've been recording for a long time today? Because that is what's been happening. Anyways, I'm getting off topic here. We can go ahead and search off the Ultra Stretch for a copy of Headbatt. And even though this might seem a little bit weird because we already use our Headbatt search, right? So it's not like we can grab more value off of that, so that kind of denies us follow-up for next turn. It's still okay because all we're really trying to do is count to 6, because if you notice, we have 3 on board right now, Rematch is 2, and Headbatt is another one, so that sums to 6. So our opponent could Nibiru us right here, and that would definitely suck, because that would kind of just be the end of our turn, to be honest. But you opened kind of awkwardly, so you kind of just have to take the good with the bad at this point. But if they don't Nibiru us there, we can just go in Appaloosa and have a good time, because now we have 6 and we are able to go into our full code breaker shenanigans. So this is essentially the full combo, and I think that it is pretty good because once again, you're pretty likely to open another Gouki. So in the cases where Headbatt isn't your only Gouki, you're just gonna leave the Headbatt and have other cards as follow-up plays. So this is pretty good, right? Like, considering that this was what is usually thought to be one of the weaker hands, it still is the full combo. And probably the worst thing about this, besides its vulnerability to Nibiru, is that you don't have like Rematch or another Gouki to follow up for next turn guaranteed, but you still have 3 other cards and the card you're drawing for next turn, so it should be pretty good. And this is one of the ways that you can just end on a full combo. Now, what happens if you open a different variation of Headbatt? So if you open Headbatt and just like a lot of other Goukis, like 2 other Goukis, and none of them are Suprex. So this looks like just a bunch of normal summons, right? But what you could do instead is just normal a Gouki, probably a level 1/1, just in case you need to for some reason. And then you special your Headbatt, and you go into your Isolde. Now this is a little weird because not only are you using your Headbatt search here already, you also already use its effect. So you have to kind of think, how are we going to kind of manage this given the resources that we have? Well, we're going to grab a rematch for sure. And then we can kind of just grab other cards that, we can use for next turn, because think about it, like we don't really care about what Gouki we search off Isolde because it's not going to be a filler since we already used Headbats, so there's no real way to actually utilize it in that specific instance or specific context. So the best course of action for Isolde search is to just grab a follow-up for next turn, so Suprex fits the bill quite nicely. And at this point, we can't really count to 5, we are just short because we're going to get our Isolde summon as our third, and then rematch will be 4/5. So we are just going to have to make do with 5, but 5 is full combo without the Appaloosa. So we grab our Guts here, or whichever level 1 Gouki we haven't used yet, of course, and then we can make a rematch live. So we can summon our other 2 Goukis. Then we can link away into a Virus Swordsman. Notably, also, by the way, when you use rematch, target one of the Goukis, or the Gouki that you pitched off the Headbatt, because this is the one time that the Gouki that we pitched off Headbatt was not the Gouki we searched off Isolde. It's actually one that we can still summon. So definitely make use out of that because it gives us an extra search for free. So yeah, we're going to grab our search off Twist Cobra here. It could just be another Headbatt for next turn. Could be pretty much anything, to be honest. Then we can make a Linkross with our Guts here, and Guts also hasn't searched yet, so we get another search. So we have 4 cards for next turn. We got 4 searches. And we're still going to go into Rusty, which is really good, which means we get double Fob Blade and we get Dragoon. So all things considered, I think this is pretty good. It is, the best follow-up out of any of these combos by far. Just look at how many Goukis we got, and we are able to mount a lot of pressure next turn because we are guaranteed Suprex plus another summon plus rematch. It's 4 summons, and then we got Headbatt because we're gonna pitch whatever we search off of like one of these 2. So yeah, we're getting a lot of Goukis next turn. So even if our opponent manages to crack the board of double Fob Blade plus Dragoon, they're gonna likely use a lot of resources, and we have a lot left in our hand plus 2 other cards. So this just goes to show that even if you have Headbatt in your opening hand, and like you're forced to use it early by some means that you weren't intending on, it's totally okay because you are able to end on pretty good boards and really good follow-up. So the final combo is going to be a very interesting one, and that is just simply going to be what happens if you draw both of your darn equip spells. So that's going to be it for that combo. Alrighty guys, so this is going to be the final combo of this very, very long video. Took even longer than I thought it would, and I thought it would take a long time as is. I do enjoy making these videos, but it's simply just not something I can do that often because of the amount of work required. However, if you do appreciate and enjoy this type of content, let me know by leaving a like, leave some comments, just, make me feel a little better about having spent a lot of time on this. But yeah, anyways, we're going to go ahead and explore what happens if you draw both of your equips. And most people seem to be on Droll'd over Living Fossil. So if these are the 2 equips you play, it's actually better than if you're playing just Living Fossil and Phoenix Blade. And this is actually the, running through this thought experiment actually has convinced me to put Droll'd into my own build. Because if you open just Living Fossil and Phoenix Blade, it's not a combo because, again, Living Fossil banishes the monster that you bring back, and you need that monster in grave for a rematch. So Droll'd is actually the better card here. So I am now on Droll'd, by the way. So just a cool little tidbit there. But we're going to go ahead, and this is, of course, assuming that we have a combo with it. If we don't have anything at all, then, yeah, we just bricked, right? So we're going to go ahead and make our Isolde. This is assuming Gouki plus Extender. And then we're going to go and grab our searches. We're going to grab a copy of Guts, which seems kind of weird, but it'll make sense in due time. And then off the Isolde, we can grab just whatever Gouki we want as follow-ups. So Suprex, again, is a very, very good card for that. So now, you can't use Isolde's second effect, so you have to use Droll'd to grab yourself a copy of Fire Flint Lady. And very similar to the other combo with Fire Flint Lady, combo number 18 it was, you are going to actually use the Fire Flint Lady to be able to grab yourself another Gouki onto the field. So you are going to use its effect, put the guts on the board, and you need it to be a level 1 Gouki because you want to put it in grave so that you can go ahead and grab rematch. Now, to be fair, you could just link it away with the Isolde, and it doesn't matter what level it is at that point, but I like guts, so that is what I'm going to argue with it for it. So we're going to go ahead and grab ourselves a rematch, and then we can go ahead and make a Linkross if we want. I decided to just go full out. This is like probably the best combo given this particular hand, and even though I'm not playing Linkross myself, and you don't need to technically, I thought, you know, it would be a good time to showcase it off. So we can Linkross, grab 2 tokens, go into the Virus Swordsman, grab our Linkross back, then we can make our Rusty, and then Rusty will go ahead and set our Shade Brigandine and send our Cloak. We can grab our Boots off the Cloak, then we can special it as well as the Shade Brigandine, and then we can go ahead and make a Link Spider. And this is kind of similar to the other combo that I talked about, which was checking for Nibiru. This was combo number... oh gosh, I'm forgetting which combos. I believe it's the one versus Ogre on Isolde's second effect. So I believe it was combo number 11. So yeah, that should be the combo that I'm referring to. But in case you can't remember or didn't watch that combo, basically what you can do is if you have a situation where you can hold rematch and are able to make a Verte, you make Verte first, because if your opponent has Nibiru, they kind of have to do it here. And then if they do end up Nibiruing you, you have rematch as follow-up, so you can make like IP or something. But if they don't, then you just go ahead and use rematch, and then you can make a copy of IP anyways, and then you can resolve your Verte Anaconda. So just like that, you are able to end on a Fall Blade on top of this as well. And considering you opened both of your equips and you were never able to resolve Isolde's second effect, that is pretty nice. And you still have a bit of a follow-up play in Suprex for next turn, so that is very, very good. And that does it for the final combo. Alrighty guys, so that is going to conclude it for this very, very in-depth combo primer slash comprehensive guide, I suppose. I've been recording all day, so my voice is raspy and I'm kind of tired, I'm not gonna lie. But I decided I wanted to rush this video out as soon as I could. It should be up by, it should be Friday by the time you guys see this. So hopefully, if I made it on schedule, we will, you know, do a little celebration dance and be very happy about it. But yeah, again, as I've been kind of reiterating, I don't mean to kind of harp on this, but this is a lot of effort. This takes a lot of time as far as me actually conceptualizing these combos, thinking of various scenarios, thinking of all the little factors, trying to play around different things. This is a lot of like kind of like algorithmic sort of brain power. I guess that's the best way to describe it. But this is something that I think is relatively unique, I'd like to hope, to the YugiTV community. So hopefully you guys do appreciate something that is a bit different from the other combo videos out there. This is just one long expansive guide. So if you guys do want to support the continuation of this kind of video, I did a bunch of these for Lunalight back in the day, but I can do these for other decks provided I get to familiarize myself with them enough. So if you guys want me to do more of these, just be sure to let me know. And again, if you stuck around and listened to the question that I've dropped in the middle of the video, you guys know. If you know, you know. But let me know about what you think about that as well. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like as well as any thoughts or feedback in the comment section down below. Feel free to subscribe for more competitive and informative Yu-Gi-Oh content. If you want to, you can follow me on Discord, Twitter, or Twitch. All 3 links in the description as always. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys!